Tell Ahsoka the fleet is ready.
Commander, you're all clear.
Thank you, Admiral. Keep the cruisers back until we've softened them up. Well, R7, are you ready for some action? Axe, keep your squadron back and wait for my signal.
You got it, boss.
As it stands, this is one of the strongest arcs for the show's first season, and I'll be honest, this isn't the strongest of the set, but I believe it provides a pivotal moment for us to take note of when it comes to Ahsoka Tano.
Cool.
This escapade begins sometime after the events of Master Dai and Captain Keeley's defense on the world of Ryloth, where the Republic were cut off and they fought to allow Sham Syndulla and his people to get away from the invading Seppies. You know, that time when this little twat got involved. This time though, the Republic have found a break in their schedule to return to Ryloth and provide aid in its war against the unjust occupation of the Separatists, and break through their blockade around the planet to allow Master Kenobi and Windu strike forces to infiltrate the Seppi defences. The duo tasked with this operation, you might be wondering, is indeed Anakin and Ahsoka.
Hello there.
Once our heroes descend from hyperspace, the fight begins with Anakin entrusting Ahsoka to pilot her first battle in space.
Not a great plan.
The instruction, though, is as follows, and it is to remain in formation and adhere to chain of command, meaning that she has to listen to Admiral Yularen whenever he gives an order. Ahsoka goes on to lead the fight with named troopers Axe, Slammer, Kickback, Tucker, Swoop, and a few others, but sadly they're caught in a trap with several more cruisers arriving to support the blockade, and overwhelm Ahsoka and her men, forcing them to retreat after Ahsoka pressed forward against instructions.
Good job.
Her reckless actions here cause most of her squad to be destroyed and one of the cruisers to be brought down, and Admiral Yularen to be injured in the melee.
You had one job. Just the one?
She quickly returns to the cruiser, accompanied by two other fighters, making it back but both badly damaged.
A worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch.
They jettison away and Anakin demands to know what the fuck went on. Ahsoka confesses that she merely wanted to prove her value as a leader and to have things ready for Obi-Wan and Mace's arrival. Anakin tries to console her but is cut off quickly when Rex informs him that the Council want an update. Ahsoka sneaks off in this moment to visit Admiral Yularen in the medical wing, who is recovering from the battle, and it's here where she promises to do right by him. Anakin reports his progress and Master Windu instructs him to get it sorted before they arrive, but they cannot send any backup as they're retaining most of their forces for the ground assault. Anakin attempts to encourage Ahsoka, informing her that they're going to go through it again, but she rejects this, stating they already lost too many troops to the last assault. Anakin instructs her to go and cool off, and in that time he decides to evacuate their current cruiser and move everyone over to the last remaining one, as this one is too heavily damaged. It factors into his plans though, as Anakin asks Ahsoka to lead the charge on this mission after he's going to pilot the cruiser directly into the central station, as he'll need a quick pickup, but they also need to handle the remaining defences. Anakin leaves her in charge, and initially she's rather insecure, but after repeatedly getting overshadowed by the command crew and Rex, Admiral Yularen returns and supports her plans to use their remaining cruiser as a shield to lure the Seppies in and then release their bombers in a surprise attack.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
They proceed with her plan and manage to bust through the blockade right as Obi-Wan and Mace arrive for the ground assault, and Anakin is rescued as we close on the hope for Ryloth's future.
That'll do, donkey. That'll do.
Now, looking at the chronological order for the series, this technically becomes part 2 to a wider story involved with this planet, and the first part focused on Master Dai and his men was fierce, moving, and honestly, despite Jar Jar, one of the best episodes of the show entirely, and I frankly would have just watched their entire beatdown if I could have. Visually, it's poignant, and obviously it came out several years later in terms of the release order, so it's bound to look vastly more refined, and the designers applied more definition to the environments, characters, lighting, etc. It leaves you compelled to journey back to these people and their plight, and ultimately this arc. I said at the start that it's not the strongest of the arc due to the slower pace, and the clone-centric aspect of the next episode is almost unrivaled, but it's still important for what it gives us regarding Ahsoka and Anakin, and what they teach each other, thereby strengthening their own relationship. Ahsoka is of course the apprentice in the scenario, so you'd think what would Anakin have to learn from her, but at this point, not long removed from Obi-Wan, and is still heavily reliant on him sometimes for guidance, it is interesting to see what he picks up from Snips, as he's still young and overzealous. So it does often take those around him like Obi-Wan, Ahsoka and Rex to ground him from time to time. As much as he teaches her to be valiant in her efforts, humble in defeat and apply a better strategy later, she reminds him that his brazen approach to most situations isn't necessarily a transferable skill, as she tried that and it cost her squad. Whereas we see multiple times throughout the show with Anakin it does work, and the majority, if not all of his men do make it. From this conversation, however, he applies what she says to his plan to plunge the cruiser nose first into the Seppi blockade, but after he's moved his men and ships to a safe location, and even commends her for reminding him of that, offering positive reinforcement, which in psychology terms encourages her to take charge of a round table with the command crew and Rex later. We see much later in the timeline with Rebels that Rex and Ahsoka both regale Ezra in tales of Anakin's heroism and remember their time with him fondly, and it's moments like this to make you realise why they feel that way. Anakin may have at times had to follow instruction, and he reminds Ahsoka of that throughout the series, but he was never without compassion or an open mind. The fact that Mace, a man who openly rejects Anakin often and is hugely skeptical over him being the chosen one, presses Annie to move on with the mission despite limited resources. And let's be honest, that alone would piss off the best of us, and he just simply smiles at it and trusts his Padawan to handle it. And it's this attitude and the type of development we needed for his character from the movies. I do feel a greater fondness for Anakin thanks to this series, and Matt Lanter does an excellent job at conveying those moments through the crisp sound of his voice. And you couple that with the animation quality and the depth put into him beyond the visuals, makes for a far more engaging character that you can empathise with. Let's not take away from Ashley Eckstein here though, she did an amazing job presenting that torment in Ahsoka's voice and how she feels throughout this episode, given that her first mission went to shit. And the key takeaway from this for Ahsoka is to learn restraint, something of which that Anakin was trying to teach her but often forgets himself. As with any situation or story like this, whether it be external or otherwise, there's a villain at the heart of it, and in this case it was Martuk, who was extremely generic.
You're basic.
He was tactile, granted, and certainly cleverer than your average bear, but he doesn't possess any qualities that I particularly remember, especially for the fact that I had to look up his fucking name. Visually, for a season 1 episode, this was where the series really started to take shape in my opinion. Movements of the models were still rather rigid and robotic in places, but otherwise things were clear, and for the end of the first season, it actually held up pretty well. Otherwise, that's all from me for this week. Be sure to subscribe and check in each week for my next reviews, and until then everyone, take care, and may the Force be with you.